Yanfang village is nestled beside the quietly flowing Day River, where the green rice fields stretch out like an endless carpet, swaying in the cool breeze blowing from the north. The old bamboo groves stand tall at the entrance of the village. Their rustling leaves seem to tell old stories of this land. Yanfang is not large, with only a few hundred red-tiled or simple thatched roofs, but it has a simple, intimate beauty, making anyone who has ever set foot here feel their hearts being watered by serenity. Here, everyone lives together like one family, from the old man leaning on a cane, his back bent as he walks across the red dirt road, to the barefoot children running around in the fields. All are attached to each other by the love of the village. The laughter, the calls to each other every evening, or the clatter of the ox cart carrying rice home, all blend into an unforgettable piece of hometown music. Diep, a 25-year-old girl, is an inseparable part of that rural picture. With long, shiny black hair, often tied into a neat braid, and eyes that sparkle like the full moon, Diep is the typical image of a country girl. Simple, honest, but full of vitality. Her smile, as bright as the morning sun, can dispel all the fatigue of those around her. Diep was born into an ordinary farming family. Her father, Mr. Tam, is a hard-working man, working in the fields all year round, his hands calloused from plowing and hoeing. Her mother, Mrs. Lan, is a hard-working woman, always busy taking care of the family and helping her husband harvest the crops. Although life is not abundant, Diep's family is always filled with laughter. They live in a small house with a tiled roof, with a garden in the back growing all kinds of vegetables and a few fruit trees. Every afternoon, when the sunset dyed the fields golden, Diep often sat on the porch, watching the swallows flying in the sky, secretly dreaming of a brighter tomorrow. Since childhood, Diep has been used to helping her parents in the fields. She learned how to sow rice, plant rice, and harvest rice since she was a child. Early in the morning, when the fog still covered the fields, Diep went to the fields with her mother, her small feet wading in the mud, her mouth humming folk songs that Mrs. Lan taught her. She was not afraid of hardship, because for Diep, farming was not only a responsibility, but also a joy. She loved the scent of new rice, loved the cool feeling of the river water when washing her feet after a long day, and loved the stories that the villagers told when they gathered. But deep in Diep's heart was a little secret, a story that she had never shared with anyone, not even her mother. This is the story of Hung, the boy who was the light of her childhood, who left the village 10 years ago, taking a part of her heart with him. Hung grew up with Diep in Yanfang. He is the son of Mr. and Mrs. Than, a well-off family in the village, who own the most spacious red-tiled house in the area. Mr. Than, Hung's father, was a commune official, respected by the villagers for his fairness and generosity. Mrs. Than, Hung's mother, is a capable woman, famous for her cooking skills. Every holiday, Hung's family always holds a party to invite the whole village, and that house is always filled with laughter. Hung, since he was a child, was different from other children in the village. He was smart, agile, and always full of energy. Hung's bright eyes seemed to contain a sky full of dreams, and he did not hesitate to share those big dreams with Diep. Hung and Diep have been close friends since they were children. They first met when they were both 5 years old, on a summer afternoon by the river. Diep, at that time, was trying to catch a small fish in the shallow water, but slipped and fell into the river. Hung, who was sitting on the bank reading a book, heard her cry and ran over to pull her up to the shore. "So stupid, you can't even catch a small fish," Hung laughed, wiping the water off Diep's face. From then on, they became close friends. They ran around the fields together, climbed guava trees, or sat under the banyan tree at the village entrance telling each other endless stories. Hung liked to talk about big cities, about airplanes flying in the sky, and about his dream of becoming an important person, someone who can change the world. As he said, Diep, although not fully understanding those ambitions, still listened with sparkling eyes, always supporting Hung with her bright smile. On summer afternoons, Hung and Diep often went to the banks of the Day River, where there was a long stretch of green grass. They lay on the grass, watching the clouds drift by, and played a guessing game. That cloud looks like an elephant. Right, Diep pointed, giggling. Hung shook his head. No. It looks like a spaceship. One day, I will go up there. Fly into space. Diep laughed, teasing. If you can fly, I can fly too. Hung turned around. Seriously, then we will fly together. Okay, Diep nodded, not knowing that this promise would become a memory deeply engraved in her heart. During those years, Hung and Diep were familiar images in Yenfang village. They were like two perfect pieces, complementing each other. Hung, with his intelligence C-sharp and big dreams, always pulled Diep out of her shyness. Diep, with her sincerity and optimism, was the biggest source of encouragement for Hung. Once, when Hung got bad grades at school and was scolded by his father, he ran to the riverbank. Huddled alone, Diep found him, said nothing, just sat quietly beside him, wove a small grass bracelet and gave it to Hung. Wear this. It will bring you luck, she said, smiling. Hung looked at the grass bracelet, laughed, and from then on, he always kept it in his pocket like a treasure. But then, when Hung was 16, everything changed. His family decided to move to Hanoi so that Hung could have a better chance at studying. Not long after, Hung was sent to study abroad in England, an opportunity that the whole village admired. The day Hung left the village, the whole Yenfang saw him off to the village gate. Diep stood silently by the banyan tree, watching the car carrying Hung disappear on the red dirt road. Before leaving, Hung ran to her side, handing her another grass bracelet, woven more meticulously. Wait for me, Diep, he said, his eyes sparkling as if containing a promise. Diep nodded, but inside she was filled with an indescribable sadness. She held the grass bracelet tightly, feeling as if a part of her childhood was leaving. In the following years, Diep continued to live a simple life in Yenfang. She continued to help her parents, finished high school, but did not go to university because her family could not afford it. Instead, she stayed in the village, working in the fields and participating in village activities. From organizing festivals to helping poor families, she became a girl loved by the whole village. But in Diep's heart there was always a void. The letters from Hung, at first regular, gradually became less frequent and then disappeared completely. She heard that Hung had succeeded abroad, becoming a young CEO of a large technology company. The news came to her through the stories of villagers, or through the rare articles she read at the tea shop at the village entrance. Diep was happy for Hung, but her heart was also heavy. Hung was now a bright star in the sky, while she was still a simple village girl, with muddy hands and small dreams. Every night, sitting on the porch, Diep often took out the grass ring to look at. It was old and withered, but she still kept it as a souvenir. She wondered if Hung still remembered her, remembered those days, or if he had been swept away into a completely different world. She did not blame Hung, but deep inside, she felt an indescribable loss. Yenfang was still peaceful, still beautiful like a picture, but to Diep, the village now lacked an important piece. Her closest friend 10 years have passed since Hung left Yenfang village, carrying with him a great dream and a vague promise to Diep under the banyan tree at the village entrance. 10 years, to Diep, were long days, where she still lived among the green rice fields, beside the quietly flowing Day River, and in the unforgettable childhood memories. But on a cool autumn afternoon, when the sunset dyed the whole village golden, Yenfang suddenly became bustling like a festival. The news spread like a breeze blowing through the bamboo grove. Hung, the boy of Mr. Than's family, is now a big boss, returning to the village. The whole village was bustling. Children ran around the alley, cheering about Mr. Hung driving a luxury car. The old people sat in front of their houses, waving palm leaf fans, telling old stories about Hung being the smartest boy in the village, always at the top of his class and dreaming of conquering the world. The villagers, from the farmers to the girls selling tea at the village entrance, were all eager to see with their own eyes the young man who had once been the pride of Yenfang. Diep, who was drying rice in the yard at that time, listened to her mother's story and her heart suddenly stirred. She stopped, her eyes dreamily looking out at the distant fields, where the memories of the days of running around with Hung were still as fresh as if it had happened yesterday. He probably just came back to visit for a bit, then left again, she told herself, trying to suppress the rising feeling of excitement. But her heart, though she didn't want to admit it, was still beating faster than usual. That afternoon, the whole village gathered in the communal houseyard, which had long been the center of events. Big and small, a shiny black car, a rarity in this countryside, slowly rolled down the red dirt road and stopped in front of the village gate. The car door opened. Hung stepped out, tall and handsome in a dark blue suit, his hair neatly combed, his confident smile still faintly reminiscent of the boy from back then. Next to him was a young, beautiful girl, wearing a light gray office dress, her shiny brown dyed hair hanging loose. She introduced herself to the villagers in a gentle but sharp voice. "I am Min An, Hung's assistant." The whole village was amazed, not only because of Hung's success but also because of Min An's outstanding appearance. The villagers whispered, "Truly a city person. So classy." Diep stood silently in the corner of the communal houseyard, holding a bamboo basket in her arms, her eyes never leaving Hung. He was so different now, no longer the skinny boy who used to climb guava trees with her. But his eyes, still sparkling like the stars of the past, made Diep's heart ache. She suddenly realized that Min An was standing close to Hung, naturally placing her hand on his shoulder, smiling brightly to help him start a conversation with the villagers. A strange, unprecedented feeling of jealousy rose in Diep's heart. She told herself that she had no right to be jealous, but that feeling kept lingering, like a cold wind blowing through her heart. That night, the village held a party to celebrate Hung's return right in the communal house yard. Oil lamps were hung everywhere, shimmering under the moonlight, creating a warm atmosphere. The banquet table was simply set but filled with rustic dishes, banchung, boiled chicken, sticky rice, and even rice wine brewed by the villagers themselves. Diep, although reluctant, was still dragged by her mother. Mrs. Lan, with a gentle smile, said, "Go and meet Hung. You two were very close when you were young." Diep reluctantly wore a simple white owl dye, her hair in a braid, still looking like the country girl she used to be. She stood hidden by the base of the communal house pillar, trying to avoid everyone's eyes, especially Hung's. But Hung recognized her immediately. In the middle of the crowd, he approached, his smile as bright as the sun. "Diep, is it really you?" Nothing has changed. His voice was full of excitement, as if the 10 years of separation had never existed. Diep smiled awkwardly, trying to hide the mixed emotions in her heart. "An Hung is so different. He's a big shot now," she replied, her voice tinged with a hint of sarcasm that she herself didn't realize. Hung laughed loudly, seemingly oblivious to the bitterness. He pulled Diep's hand, leading her to the ancient banyan tree at the entrance of the village, where they used to sit and talk for hours when they were kids. The autumn wind blew gently. The banyan leaves rustled. Hung sat down on the grass, signaling Diep to sit with him. "Diep, are you okay? I miss the village. I miss the old days," he said, his eyes sparkling as if containing a sky full of memories. Diep looked at him, her heart mixed with joy at seeing Hung still miss his hometown and nameless sadness. "You miss, but maybe you only miss the village, right?" she asked, her voice tinged with bitterness, her eyes glancing at Min An, who was standing not far away, talking and laughing with the villagers. Hung was surprised. Before he could reply, Min An stepped forward, her voice soft. "Hung, everyone is waiting for you to speak." Diep turned away, her hand tightly gripping the old brass ring in her pocket. Her heart heavy, she walked slowly on the path leading home, the faint moonlight shining on her lonely figure. Under the banyan tree, she wondered if Hung still remembered the promise from years ago, "Wait for me, Diep," or if he belonged to a faraway world, where there was Min An and the halos that she, a country girl, could not reach in the days after Hung returned. Yenthang village seemed to be wearing a new coat, full of vitality and hope. Not just simply visiting his hometown, Hung brought with him a big project, building a new school for the children and renovating the village market into a small trading center, where people could sell agricultural products and handicrafts. He also proposed organizing an autumn festival, the first in the history of the village, to attract tourists from neighboring areas. The whole village was buzzing with discussion. From Muzhan's small tea shop at the beginning of the village to the sessions of sitting with palm leaf fans under the porch. The elders nodded. Hung really has a heart for his homeland. The children were excited because they heard that the festival would have lion dances and fireworks. But for Diep, that news only made her more confused. She tried to keep her distance from Hung, but he always seemed to find a way to appear before her eyes, as if wanting to rekindle childhood memories. Every time she met Hung, Diep couldn't help but notice Min An, the beautiful assistant who was always by his side. Min An, with her confident smile and urban demeanor, seemed to belong to a completely different world from Diep. She always appeared at the right time, with sharp words and intimate gestures towards Hung. Diep felt like a shadow, unable to compare to Min An's splendor. "I'm just a country girl. How can I compare to her?" Diep often told herself, but the jealousy in her heart kept growing, like a smoldering fire that could not be extinguished. One afternoon, when the golden sunlight spread across the rice fields, Diep was planting rice with her mother and a few neighbors. Her feet were covered in mud. Her conical hat blocked the harsh sunlight. Suddenly, Hung appeared at the edge of the field, took off his vest, rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt, and stepped into the field with a bright smile. "Let me try. I could do it when I was young," he said, his voice full of excitement. But after only a few steps, Hung slipped and fell into the muddy water. Laughter rang out from the people around him. Diep, despite trying to keep her cool, couldn't help but laugh. For the first time since Hung's return, her smile was truly radiant, like the sunlight sparkling on the water. "Hung, you know how to plant rice," she teased, her eyes sparkling. Hung struggled to get up, wiped the mud off his face, and replied, "Back then, I taught you how to plant rice. Have you forgotten? Do you still remember how strict I was?" At that moment, time seemed to turn back. Diep saw again the image of the mischievous boy Hung, always making her laugh with his silly jokes. They planted rice together. Hung was clumsy but tried, and Diep instructed him in a half-teasing, half-gentle tone. Mrs. Lan and the neighbors looked at them, smiling subtly, as if seeing the old days again. But that joy didn't last long. Min An appeared on the edge of the field, holding an umbrella to block the sun, her dress still neat as if she had just stepped out of the office. "Hung, what are you doing here that you're so dirty? Get in the car. I need to discuss the festival plan," she said, her voice gentle but full of authority. Diep lowered her head, quietly returning to work, her hand tightening on the sickle. Hung hesitated, looking at Diep as if he wanted to say something, but in the end still followed Min An, leaving Diep with an empty feeling. That night, Diep sat alone on the bank of the Day River, where she and Hung used to play when they were children. The silvery moonlight shone on the water, reflecting the old grass bracelet she took out of her pocket. The bracelet was dry and worn, but to Diep, it was still the most precious keepsake, containing Hung's promise 10 years ago. "He has Min An. What else can I expect?" she whispered. Her voice choked, but deep down, Diep could not extinguish the hope that Hung still remembered those days. Remembered the afternoons lying on the grass, watching the clouds and dreaming about the future. A few days later, Hung suddenly came to Diep's house, carrying a basket of fresh guavas picked from his old garden. That house was now only looked after by his uncle, but the guava tree was still as laden with fruit as ever. "Remember when you were little? You always fought over guavas with me. Do you remember?" Hung said, his smile as warm as the autumn sunshine. Diep looked at him, wanting to respond with sincerity, but the image of Min An standing next to Hung at the party in the communal house yard appeared again, making her hesitate. "You're so busy. Why do you have time to come here?" she asked, her voice cold, trying to hide her emotions. Hung was surprised, his eyes slightly sad. "Diep, are you angry with me? I just want to talk. Like old times." Diep turned her face away, not wanting him to see the tears that were about to fall. She was afraid that if she said more, she would reveal her heart, the heart that had been waiting for Hung after 10 long years, even though she knew that the distance between them was now a world. The next day, the whole village began preparing for the autumn festival according to Hung's idea. Diep was assigned to decorate the communal house yard, and she worked with several young girls in the village. But every time she saw Hung and Min An passing by, discussing the plan enthusiastically, she felt like she was on the sidelines. Once, while tying the lantern strings, Diep heard Min An say to Hung, "Brother Hung, tonight you have to attend a party with some partners in the district. I have already arranged the car." Diep tightened the string in her hand, her heart heavy. I don't belong here anymore, she thought, and for the first time, she wondered if she should let go of those memories. Yenthang village these days seems to be covered with a new layer of light. Hung's project, building a school and renovating the village market, along with the upcoming autumn festival, makes the whole village bustling. The communal house yard is decorated with red lanterns. Small stalls are set up to prepare to sell ban chung, nem chow and other specialties. But for Diep, the joy of the whole village cannot dispel the heavy feeling in her heart. Every time she sees Hung and Min An appear together, discussing the project enthusiastically, she feels like she is being pushed aside. The jealousy, although she tries to suppress it, grows like a smoldering fire in her heart. One evening, the whole village gathered at the small beer house of Uncle Tu at the beginning of the village, where Hung invited everyone to thank them for their support for the project. The beer house, which is just a simple thatched roof with a few wooden tables and chairs, is more crowded than usual today. Laughter, chatter, and the sound of clinking glasses resounds. Diep, dragged by her village friends, sat at the corner of the table, quietly observing. Hung, in a simple shirt, looked more approachable than in his usual suit. He walked from table to table, shaking hands, thanking people, smiling brightly. But what made Diep uncomfortable was that Min An, with her perfect smile and gentle voice, was always by Hung's side, helping him talk to everyone. When Min An accidentally put her hand on Hung's arm, laughing loudly at a joke, Diep felt her heart being squeezed. "I'm so stupid. Why do I keep paying attention to him?" she thought to herself. But anger and jealousy made her unable to sit still. Unable to bear it, Diep stood up, quietly leaving the beer house. She walked quickly on the red dirt road leading home, the faint moonlight shining on her lonely figure. She clenched the grass ring in her pocket, tears welling up. "He doesn't remember me anymore. It's all just memories," she thought, her heart filled with grievance. But before she could go far, she heard hurried footsteps behind her. "Diep, wait for me," Hung called, panting from running after her. Diep stopped, but did not turn around. His voice cold, "Go back to the shop. Everyone is waiting." Hung walked in front of her, his eyes sincere. "Diep, what's wrong with you? Since the day I came back, you've been avoiding me. Did I do something wrong?" Diep couldn't hold back anymore. Her anger flared up. "I didn't do anything wrong. But I have Min An. Why do I need to pay attention to a country girl like me?" Hung was surprised, then burst out laughing, making Diep even angrier. "What are you laughing at? Do you think I'm funny?" she shouted, tears rolling down her cheeks. Hung quickly grabbed her hand, his voice gentle. "Diep, you misunderstood. Min An is just an assistant, and she's about to get engaged to my best friend. I've never seen her the way you think." Diep was stunned, standing still under the moonlight. Hung continued, "Over the past 10 years, I have never forgotten you. Every time I encounter difficulties, I think of your smile, and it gives me strength." He took a new, meticulously woven grass bracelet from his pocket. "The old one must be broken. I knit this one for you," he said, smiling. Diep took it, tears falling, but this time out of happiness. "Shall I stay here?" she asked, her voice trembling. Hung held her hand tighter. "I will go. But this time, I want you to go with me, not to leave the village, but to build a future together." They stood there, under the silver moonlight, the dim light shining on Diep's face, highlighting her sparkling eyes still filled with tears. The moment Hung held her hand, handing her the newly woven grass bracelet, the emotions that had been suppressed for 10 years seemed to burst out. Diep squeezed the bracelet tightly in her hand, feeling the warmth from Hung's hand, and for the first time in many days, she felt her heart lighten. Although there were many challenges ahead, Her and Hung's hearts had finally found each other again, like the days of childhood on the banks of the Day River, where they used to lie on the grass, watch the clouds drift by and dream of great things. Hung looked at Diep, his eyes filled with both sincerity and a bit of shyness. Diep, don't be mad at me anymore, okay? He said, his voice warm. Diep smiled, this time without any awkwardness. I'm not mad, it's just, I'm afraid you've forgotten me, she whispered, her eyes downcast. Hung shook his head, pulling her to sit on the grass by the roadside, under the shade of an ancient banyan tree. How could I forget? You are the one who reminded me that I was once a village boy, before becoming something in the city, he said, laughing at himself. Diep looked at him, feeling warm, but a question still lingered in her mind. Did Hung, with his glamorous world, really belong here anymore? In the following days, Hung stayed in the village longer than expected. He and Min An, now clarified to be just a colleague, continued to work with the villagers to prepare for the autumn festival. Diep, although still a bit hesitant, also participated more actively. She was assigned to lead a group of young girls in the village, decorate the communal house yard and prepare stalls to sell specialties. Every day, she was busy tying lanterns, making ban chung, and coordinating with the ladies to cook traditional dishes. Yen Thang village, which was once peaceful, now seemed to have put on a new coat, bustling with laughter and an excited atmosphere. One afternoon, when Diep and Muz Han, the owner of the tea shop at the beginning of the village, were arranging the stalls, Hung appeared with an old bicycle, which he had borrowed from Uncle Tu. Diep, take a break, I'll take you for a ride, he called, smiling mischievously like a boy in the past. Diep hesitated, but Hung's sincere eyes made it impossible for her to refuse. She sat on the back seat, her hand gently holding onto his shirt, and they cycled through red dirt roads, through fragrant rice fields, to the banks of the Day River. The wind blew coolly, carrying the scent of ripe rice and wild grass. Hung stopped the bike by a grassy field, where they used to play when they were kids. Remember this place? You used to make me weave grass hoops here, he said, pointing to an old banyan tree. Diep laughed and nodded. Of course I do. I was terrible at weaving. You always criticized me. They sat down on the grassy field, chatting about the old days. Hung talked about his years abroad, about the times he felt lost in the bustling city, and how he always carried the old grass ring with him as a souvenir. It reminds me of home, of you, he said, his voice low. Diep blushed, her heart beating fast, but she still didn't dare ask what she wanted to know most. Would Hung stay? Or would he leave again, taking with him the new hopes that were budding in her heart? The autumn festival finally arrived, turning Yen Thang into a brilliant picture. Red lanterns hung all over the communal house yard. The sound of lion dance drums resounded, and the aroma of ban chung and nem chao filled the air. Diep, in a light blue ao dai, stood by the handicraft stall, instructing children how to fold dong leaves. Hung, in the role of organizer, went around the festival, shaking hands with villagers, taking pictures with tourists from neighboring districts. Min An, with her dynamism, helped coordinate the activities, but Diep realized that she no longer made her as uncomfortable as before. The truth about Min An dispelled her jealousy, but Diep still felt an invisible distance between her and Hung. He was a successful CEO, and she was just a country girl. That night, as fireworks exploded brightly in the sky, Hung came to Diep in the corner of the communal house yard. You are so beautiful, Diep, he said, his eyes sparkling under the light of the fireworks. Diep smiled lightly, but her voice was slightly sad. An Hung, I am grateful to you for what you do for the village. But after the festival, you will leave, right? Hung was silent, then took her hand, leading her to the riverbank, where the moonlight and fireworks blended together. Diep, I can't promise to stay forever, but I promise not to leave you alone anymore. I want us to build a future together, not just for the village, but for both of us. Diep looked at him, her heart fluttering. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that Hung's world and hers were an ocean apart. But in that moment, under the moonlight and the sound of fireworks, she felt his sincerity. She gently put the new grass bracelet on her hand, smiling. Then you have to keep your word. Hung. He nodded, holding her hand tighter, and there they stood, on the banks of the Day River, where childhood memories mingled with the hope of a new beginning. After a long tiring day at the office, CEO Hung stepped out of his luxury car, his tired eyes scanning the glittering skyscrapers. The city at night was always bustling, but in Hung's heart, a strange silence suddenly came. He stopped in front of the door of his penthouse, his hand touching the key, but his mind drifted to another place, an old window where Diep used to stand. Hung clearly remembered the late afternoons, when the sunset covered Diep's face in gold. She often stood by the small window of the rented house, her dreamy eyes looking out at the small alley full of hawking voices. Hung, do you see the beautiful sunlight? Diep used to ask, her voice as light as the wind. At that time, Hung just smiled, saying she was too dreamy, but that image was deeply engraved in his heart. Those moments, those simple, were like precious gems that he did not realize the value of until they lost them. They used to be two pieces that seemed inseparable. Diep, with her free spirit and emotional heart, always brought Hung a sense of peace amidst the burning ambitions of youth. At that time, he was just a young man starting a business, full of desire but also often uncertain. Diep was the one who was by his side, listening to his big dreams, and sometimes, simply holding his hand through difficult days. That small rented house, with its old window frames, used to witness their shared dreams. But then, time and ambition pulled Hung away. He threw himself into the hustle and bustle of work, million-dollar deals, handshakes with big partners, and gradually, the distance between him and Diep grew. Diep said nothing, just quietly left, leaving a short message. Hung, live well with your dream. He did not hold her back, because at that time, he thought he had the whole world to conquer. Now, standing in front of the large glass door of the penthouse overlooking the entire city, Hung suddenly felt empty. The luxurious room with expensive furniture, the art paintings hanging on the wall, and the sparkling branded watch on her wrist, all seemed unable to fill the void that Diep left behind. He wondered, where was she now? Was she still standing by a window somewhere, watching the sunset and remembering the old days? Or had she found a new place, a new person, to share the moments that he had missed? Hung walked to the window, his eyes silently following the traffic below. The bustling people, the flashing neon lights, all like a vivid but cold painting. He smiled slightly, but that smile carried a hint of bitterness. He remembered the times Diep pulled him to the window, just to watch a lazy cat sunbathing on the roof opposite. Hung, you see, sometimes life only needs small things to be happy enough, she once said. At that time, he just nodded in agreement. But now, he realized how many simple and precious things he had missed. He opened the glass door, letting the cool night breeze flow into the room. Hung closed his eyes, imagining himself standing in front of the old window where Diep used to stand. He wondered, if time could be turned back, would he dare to give up his ambitions to keep her? Or would he still let her go? Like he did? The answer, perhaps, he would never know. Hung took out his phone, scrolled through his contacts and stopped at the name, Diep. That phone number had been inactive for a long time, but he had never deleted it. He clicked on the last message she sent. A short line appeared on the screen. Hung, live well with your dream. He smiled, but his eyes were stinging. Perhaps he will never find those afternoons with Diep again, but that memory will always be a warm corner in the heart of the man who thought he had everything. He turned back, walked into the large but empty room. The night was still long, and Hung knew, no matter how much success he had, he would always carry the image of Diep, the girl by the window, where the sunset once illuminated their most beautiful dreams. When the clock struck 4:30 a.m., the sound of a rooster crowing from the corner of the co-op behind the house woke Diep up. The early morning light was still dim, only weak rays of light penetrated the thin mist covering the fields. Diep turned over, got off the old bamboo bed, and washed her face with cool well water to dispel her sleepiness. In the small kitchen, her mother had gotten up early, preparing a simple breakfast, a bowl of cold rice with savory braised fish and some pickled vegetables. Diep sat down to eat breakfast, listening to her mother talk about today's weather forecast. Sunny. No rain. Perfect for cutting rice. She nodded, feeling excited because this year's rice crop looked much better than last year's. After breakfast, Diep prepared her tools, a sharp sickle that had been carefully sharpened since last night, a worn-out conical hat that still protected against the harsh sunlight, and a large bottle of water in a cloth bag. She wore a light blue long-sleeved shirt to protect her skin from the sun, and her feet were covered in durable rubber sandals. Ready to step out into the fields. On the path leading to the fields, Diep breathed in the fresh air, mixed with the smell of soil, grass, and ripe rice. The chirping of sparrows echoed from the bamboo bushes along the road, and in the distance was the rumbling sound of the neighbor's tractor. Diep smiled, feeling the peace of the early morning, even though she knew that a hard day's work was waiting ahead. When Diep arrived at her field, the sun had just risen, dyeing the entire ripe rice field golden. The dewdrops glistened on each stalk of rice, sparkling like small gems. Today, Diep's main task was to cut rice on the 2-acre field. She began her work, holding a sickle and quickly cutting each bundle of rice, her movements rhythmic like a familiar dance. With each steady slash of the sickle, she carefully arranged the bundles of rice neatly for easy tying later. Working with Diep were her mother and 2 neighbors, Lan and Uncle Hai. The atmosphere in the field was filled with laughter. Lan told stories about her son who had just learned to walk, while Uncle Hai excitedly predicted the price of rice this year. Diep listened as she worked, occasionally adding in a few funny stories about her childhood days, when she used to run around in the fields, catch grasshoppers, and fly kites. Those stories eased the fatigue of the work, making time pass more quickly. As noon approached, the sun began to get hotter. Sweat ran down Diep's forehead. She stopped, wiped her face with her sleeve, and took a sip of cool water from a bottle. Looking at the neatly arranged bundles of cut rice, Diep felt a simple joy. Come on, there's only half a field left, she told herself, then continued working with high spirits. At around 11 o'clock, when the sun was at its zenith, Diep and everyone else decided to take a lunch break. They found shade under a large banyan tree near the edge of the field, where a cool breeze blew. Diep's mother spread out a small mat, took out from a cloth bag a few rice balls wrapped in banana leaves, some sesame salt, a few slices of grilled dried fish, and a plate of boiled water spinach picked from the garden. The lunch was simple but delicious, especially when eaten in the open space of the field. Diep ate while admiring the surrounding scenery. In the distance, white storks flew over the fields. The sound of frogs croaking from the small ditch mixed with the rustling wind through the rice. She lay on the mat, closed her eyes and relaxed, feeling the peace that only days of working in the fields could bring. Sister Lan teased, Diep, lying like this, be careful not to fall asleep. You won't be able to wake up in the afternoon. The group laughed loudly, and Diep replied, don't worry. If I sleep, the rice will grow back by itself. The crisp laughter rang out, making the atmosphere even warmer. After the break, Diep and everyone returned to work. In the afternoon, she switched to tying the rice into large bundles, each bundle tied tightly with bamboo strips to make it easier to carry home. This job required skill, because if the bundles were not tight, the rice would burst open during transport. Diep worked hard, but did not forget to sing a few folk songs in response to Lan, a habit of the villagers when working in the fields. The simple folk songs, sometimes mixed with humor, made the atmosphere less heavy. As the sun gradually set in the west, the orange sunlight covered the fields, creating a picturesque scene. Diep stood up straight, stretched her shoulders to relieve fatigue, and admired the results of the day, golden bundles of rice stacked on the field, ready to be carried to the warehouse. She felt tired, but it was a satisfying tiredness. This crop has good rice. It will be a big harvest, her mother said, her voice full of hope. Diep nodded, her heart also filled with faith in a successful harvest. As dusk fell, Diep and her mother carried the last bundles of rice home. The mother and daughter shared the load, each carrying 2 heavy bundles on their shoulders. The path leading back to the village was now quiet, with only the steady sound of footsteps and the rustling of rice. Along the way, Diep saw a few children in the neighborhood flying kites, their laughter echoing in the evening light. She smiled, remembering her childhood days, when she herself used to run around on this path. Arriving home, Diep put the bundles of rice in the barn, then went to the well to draw water to bathe. The cool well water dispelled the heat and fatigue of the day. After that, she sat down to dinner with her family. Dinner included sour snakehead fish soup, braised pork with eggs, and a plate of boiled sweet potato leaves, familiar dishes but full of hometown flavor. The whole family ate and talked about today's work, about the plan to dry and sell rice in the next few days. Diep is a 24-year-old girl living in Saigon, working in a small company specializing in graphic design. She has a simple life, loves to sit in the afternoon at a roadside cafe, sipping a cup of latte and drawing sketches on her tablet. Diep is not a very ambitious person, but she always has a dream, to work on a big project, where her talent can shine. One day, at an art exhibition event in the city center, Diep happened to meet Hung, CEO of a rising technology company, famous for its breakthrough products in the field of artificial intelligence. Hung, 32 years old, is an attractive man with sharp eyes, a polite smile and a confident demeanor. He stood in the crowd, chatting with investors, but his eyes accidentally met Diep, who was quietly standing next to an abstract painting. Hung approached her, talking to her about the painting. "What do you think of this work?" he asked, his voice warm. Diep, not used to the attention from someone like Hung, was a little embarrassed but still replied, "I see it as an untold story." As if the artist wanted to hide something, Hung smiled, clearly attracted by her acumen. From there, the conversation went on longer than expected. From art to technology, from personal dreams to big ideas. Before parting, Hung handed Diep his business card. "If you want to try your hand at a really big project, contact me," he said, his eyes sparkling as if he was challenging her. Diep spent a week thinking about Hung's offer. She learned about his company, a multi-million-dollar technology startup, with projects related to smart user interface design and AI-based user experiences. Finally, she decided to email Hung, expressing her desire to try. Just a few hours later, she received a response, an invitation to his office to discuss a new project. At the company's modern office, Diep was overwhelmed by the professional and dynamic atmosphere. Hung interviewed her directly, not as a cold CEO, but as a companion who wanted to explore her potential. He gave Diep a task, to design the interface for a new mobile application. With the requirement of simple but captivating, Diep accepted the challenge, although full of anxiety. In the following months, Diep worked closely with Hung's team. She realized that Hung was not only a talented CEO, but also a visionary who always knew how to inspire others. However, she also noticed that he was a difficult person to approach, always keeping his distance from everyone, as if hiding a part of his true self. Late-night meetings, heated discussions about design, and rare moments when Hung laughed with her made Diep begin to feel something different, a bond that went beyond work. One evening, when the two stayed in the office to complete a demo for investors, Hung suddenly shared with Diep about his past. He said that he was a poor student, growing up in a slum on the outskirts of Hanoi. His success today was not easy, but the result of years of struggle, failure, and personal sacrifice. "I don't have time for relationships," Hung said, his voice low. "When you stand in this position, people only look at your success. No one cares what you lost to achieve it." Diep listened quietly, sensing the loneliness hidden behind Hung's strong appearance. She began to understand that behind his sharp eyes and confident smile, Hung was a person with many emotional wounds. She wanted to say something to comfort him, but could only hold his hand for a brief moment. Hung looked at her, his eyes slightly surprised, then smiled sadly. Time passed. Diep and Hung's project became a great success. The application they developed together received great attention from the technology world, and Diep was recognized as one of the most talented young designers. But what troubled her was not the success, but her feelings for Hung. She realized that she loved him, but also understood that Hung was a person living in his own world, where feelings seemed to have no place. One day, Diep decided to express her feelings. She asked Hung out at the coffee shop where they first met. In the familiar space, she said, "Hung, I don't know what you think of me, but I want you to know that I really like you, not just because you are the CEO, but because of who you really are." Hung was silent. His eyes were complicated, both warm and distant. He replied, "Diep, you are a special person, but I'm not sure I can give you what you deserve." Hung's words were like a knife, but Diep did not blame him. She understood that Hung was imprisoned by the past and the pressure of the present. She smiled and said, "I don't need you to promise anything. I just want you to know that I am always here, if you need it." After that conversation, Diep and Hung maintained a working relationship, but there was an invisible distance between them. Diep continued to work at Hung's company for another year, before deciding to leave to pursue her own dream, opening a small design studio where she could freely create. Hung supported her decision, and on Diep's last day at the company, he gave her a painting, the abstract painting they had looked at together when they first met. Diep hung that painting in her studio. Every time she looked at it, she remembered Hung, the man who changed her life, not only by the opportunity he brought, but also by the sincere moments he unintentionally revealed. She didn't know if Hung ever thought of her the way she remembered him, but she believed that somewhere in his heart, she had left a small mark. Diep and Hung's story doesn't have a clear ending, but it is a story about maturity, about feelings that don't need to be reciprocated, and about learning to appreciate the beautiful moments in life. Diep spent a week thinking about Hung's offer. She learned about his company, a multi-million-dollar startup that specializes in high-technology solutions with smart user interfaces. Finally, she decided to email Hung, expressing her desire to try it out. Just a few hours later, she received a response, an invitation to his office to discuss a new project. Hung's office was a modern space, filled with natural light and a dynamic atmosphere. Hung interviewed Diep directly, not as a cold CEO, but as a companion who wanted to explore her potential. He assigned her the task of designing the interface for a new mobile application, with the requirement, simple, but must make users unable to take their eyes off. Diep, though nervous, accepted the challenge. In the following months, Diep worked closely with Hung's team. She realized that Hung was not only a talented CEO, but also a visionary who always knew how to inspire. But she also felt the mystery in him. Hung always kept his distance, as if hiding a part of his true self. Late meetings, heated discussions about design, and rare moments when Hung laughed with her mates.